We're not actually going to go over the prompt. We're going to go over some stuff that's integral to understanding where we're going in value. But I feel like it's so important to talk about this stuff first, because Essay 3 is going to be just one angle of arguments of value, and then Essay 4 is going to be you pick. But I'm going to force you guys to all work with the same element, but first we're talking about value stuff in general. So first off, let's talk about criteria for evaluation in value arguments. Right, so if we compare what we were doing before, arguments of fact, it was very clear what your criteria was. Is it true? Is it true outside of your feelings about it, or outside of someone else's feelings about it? Is it true for others as well? That's what you were doing. You were hunting down facts, and you were hunting down smaller facts to argue for a larger, more difficult to prove fact. So for value, now you're working with subjective elements of value in and of itself. People have different values on different things. What do you think would make you happy in life? It's going to be different for every person. Well, not for every person, but it's going to be different for most people to varying degrees. So there's a lot of variables, and there's a lot of subjective stuff here. But if you are making an argument of value, you're trying to convince others of your standard for value, which is going to be, where's the word we're looking for here? It's all over the place, but criteria. So there's criterion is one, and criteria would be multiple. So you may only have one criterion, depending on what we're talking about here, but it's always going to be pretty much your standard, or what makes something acceptable or not. So in value arguments, it can be good or bad. It can even be like not even just moral stuff, it can be like aesthetics. Like that band is good. Or that wallpaper, well, we don't like wallpaper still, right? For the past 50 years. Yeah, more like, bangs. You guys like bangs? Sorry, no, you got bangs. So. Maybe tight pants, or baggy pants, or pastels, or, what your favorite color is, stuff like that. Aesthetics. Right, there's those kinds of things, and they're very subjective. And you could make arguments about where they come from. If it was because your dad beat you with a pink belt and now you hate pink or something like that, or if it was because, obviously, that would be silly. Why would your dad, if your dad beats you, he's not using a pink belt, right? That would be really weird, especially if they meant to do that on purpose. Like, spank the queer out of you or something like that. They would say queer. I wouldn't say queer. That's not, appropriate. But there's, it's going to get worse. You thought the class couldn't get any worse in that direction. It's going to get so much worse. So it can be, you're evaluating a thing, right? Like, let's say a band. Well, you can't just say the band sucks. I mean, you could say that, but how are you going to convince someone else that band sucks? What if they really like the band? What if they're your boyfriend or girlfriend and you really like them and you're trying to convince them of why that band sucks? You don't just say they suck, you have to go through criteria. Well, their lyrics. How about the instrumental accompaniment? How about the topics in the lyrics, or the depth of meaning, or whatever it is, or their annoying nasally voice? Have you ever listened to a band where you're like, this band would be amazing if I could just get past that person's voice, something like that. Or maybe they have to have synth drums and you hate synth drums. There are so many different things that you would point to rather than just saying the band sucks, and they're all criteria. Good music has to be able to be something that is performed live, so it's not just Avicii, sorry, I know, he... just like getting on stage and pressing a button, and then the whole song plays itself, and you're like, why am I here listening to someone's music that is not any different because it's just a button they press? They're not actually doing anything to create the music on the spot. No? Anything? So you guys get what criteria is already, yeah? Yeah, but your evidence is going to be set upon, because it can't always be fact, you can point to fact. Like, you could talk about the decibel of that guy's voice, that objective way it rattles people's eardrums so that they actually feel ill. You could make that kind of argument, but a lot of your arguments are really going to come down to preference. Yeah, and so depending on what we're talking about here, it could be just if you like or dislike something, or it could actually come to like a life or death scenario where the results of where you go with it could have implications that are very severe, not just the band getting booed or not selling as many copies or just letting someone know how you feel about it. There's varying degrees, and so we're going to go with something more, but it's good to use these as examples. Yeah, who's the best president? Just saying best, right? This is now a value point. So best president, well, what are the variables for that? And it makes it a little difficult when you want to ascribe something to a president when they're just one dude. So like if our economy was doing just really good under Bill Clinton, I mean, is it Bill Clinton or is it that the internet started booming right then? Same thing with Trump. If he says the economy is all of a sudden better for him, is it because of him or is it because of all this legwork and stuff that happened beforehand? You get how like there's so many variables for that. Like, well, what would make a president the best, and how do you define this? So in order to find evidence that may not be factual but may be valid for reasoning, you have to understand or you have to define your criteria in such a way where it's criteria that is acceptable to the most amount of people, because you're trying to get people to agree with you so that you can, make yourself feel better about what you think, right? Because that's what this is all about. No, comforting yourself. No, it goes a lot further than that. That sounds very petty. What's the best phone? You'll see tons of videos on this. People make weekly videos. I have a buddy who started his own YouTube channel, and he's got like 100,000 subscribers now, and all he does is rate technology that comes out, especially phones, and he's making enough money to sustain himself now off of 100,000 subscribers. It's crazy. So good for him. Yeah. That would make me die inside doing that every week, but he likes it, and that's cool for him. Who's the best ball player? Well, do we just go with stats, or are you also talking about like integrity? So if we're talking about basketball and we talk about Curry or just the Warriors last season and how like the difference between them and then the way that someone else's team might play, like a LeBron James, where he's like a one-man show and he doesn't really give a crap about his teammates, whereas the Warriors all work together. And so if someone else isn't meeting their status quo on like how many points they should be getting, like the other guys will actually pass the ball to them, and so they work more as a team. So what makes someone a better ball player? Is it because they play better as a teammate, or are they just like this one-man show? You see how there's so many ways that you could go with it, and so long as you define your criteria and you justify it, then you can use stuff that isn't necessarily fact to argue as evidence. If you can find fact stuff, though, that's always best. Yeah. So we're going to work with morality for the whole thing, by the way. It's not going to be like if you like plaid or whatever. So we're going to read Shooting an Elephant. What I want you guys to do is read along, and we're going to have some, like, I feel like he's British, I can't remember, but he's got a good voice, and he's going to read it to us slowly. So you're going to underline, obviously, anything that you think is significant in the text, and then we're going to talk about it.
In Maulmain in Lower Burma, I was hated by large numbers of